Okay, so we're holding in Hilchos Taaruvot Siman Kuf Zayin, and we're pretty much towards the end of Hilchos Taaruvot. And we began to discuss Seif Aleph last week, and we're going to go into Seif Beis. The Siman speaks about two very different kinds of things. One is about cooking eggs or fish, and encountering an egg or a fish that is treif. And the second part of the Siman talks about zvuvim, flies, or other insects that are repugnant to us. So we reviewed a little bit the halachas last time concerning Seif Aleph about the best way to deal with a taruvas where we know already that there is an isser and we have the shishim. So we're not concerned about the taruvas per se at this time because there's shishim. The shishim will counter any tam that is present, and the issue that is be'ein, that is identifiable, will be removed. So that's okay. However, since we're dealing with a big pot, and generally what the housewife will do possibly is take the pot and transfer over to a bowl or to various bowls, she needs to be careful how she does this, because we're dealing with a pot on top of the fire that is still a kli rishon and is still very, very hot. And if you do not pour it out properly, you're going to run into a potential problem of having at a given time less than shishim in the pot, right? Because you're pouring out some and you still have some left, and that which is left is not enough to be mevatel the isur, which still may be in the pot, of course. So what does the Mechaber recommend? Mechaber says you either wait till everything cools off, or you can, of course, add cold water to it. That was a second choice. Right? And what about taking out the isur itself first? Right? That shouldn't be a problem either. Right? All he says is what you don't want to do is not take it out little by little. You may find
eggs.
If it's the eggs, right? You don't know. With the eggs, you for sure don't know. You may find an efroach, a cheek, and of course that would be a problem because it's not shechted. And of course, you would have the tam of that egg affecting the other eggs. Even though we're talking about eggs, normal eggs with a shell, it's still a problem. And the same the Rama says applies to dogim ktanim. And the main issue was that the dog that is treif may remain at the end. If it would not be, if the dog that's treif would not remain at the end, but was removed, that's not a problem. Now we had a similar situation in the previous Siman, but that was a separate problem. That was a problem of chanan, or potential chanan. Depends if you hold like the Mechaber or like the Ramah, with a piece of meat having chalev attached to it, which is an issue of isur davuk. And it presented a different set of problems. Here you don't have that. In other words, you have a real isur. You have either the egg that has an efroach, or you have a dog that's tomeh, catfish or whatever. So we don't have the issue of chanan affecting, because it's treif. You're going to get rid of it. It's not that you can cut away the chalev and try to save that piece of. So this seif is a little bit different, but that's the same advice is given to us, that it pays to wait till things cool off, because then you have less problems. If it's still very, very hot, you can have all kinds of issues to deal with, all kinds of sfeikas. Wait a minute, did I have shishim? Was there shishim left over? What came out first? What came out last? All of a sudden you see a dark tummy that you weren't aware of, perhaps. Now, it's there. Well, I should have waited. It was all cold. I wouldn't have had this suffix right now. So that's why the Mechaber says that this is the best solution whenever there's this kind of a potential problem. And there may be, with eggs, maybe one of them has an efroach in it. Now, we don't have that problem. Your wife can cook many, many eggs and not have to be concerned about it. But, as Ilan pointed out, there are some areas of the world where they still have free running, how do you call them? Cage-free. Yeah.
They have them here. It's not
Yeah.
treated those?
Yeah. Anyway, whenever you may have those kind of eggs, you may have that problem. That's what he's talking about here. I mean, it's a sar chashinan, he says. You're concerned. When are we concerned? When there is a possibility that there may be, such a problem. There are cases when there's no reason to be choshesh. Same thing is with bugs. With bugs there are halachas that deal with chazaka. You have to check every single raspberry. What if you've checked 3 containers and they're fine? You have to check every single one? Not necessarily. You go by certain chazaka. If the trend is
salad heads.
What is that?
Salad.
No, I chose the example of raspberry heads. Raspberries. But it could be with other things too, unless you know for a fact these lettuces have a chazaka, they're infested. Once they have such a reputation that you can't say, well, I didn't find it here. No, you got to check it because they are known. They're known to have.
So the chazaka doesn't imply something being infested.
It's known to be infested. Sure, it's known to be infested. Romaine lettuce is known to have all kinds of aphids or bugs. You got to check every leaf, and you will always find if you prepare 3 heads or more, you will find. If you prepare 1 head, you may be lucky and not find. It could be. But you got to check them because they're known to have, right? The pre-wash don't usually have a problem. But lately, yeah, that's what I was told as well. So it's always best to at least rinse them out under a strong current of water. But you can't do that with every little vegetable. Certain things you can't rinse. You have to either bang them on the table, and you don't want to bang too hard because you'll squish them. So some people just don't use them because it's just too hard to check, depending what the berry, depending on the fruit or vegetable.
Which one is it? There's a kind of berries.
Or the raspberry. Raspberry, I was checking. Somebody gave me a large container for free. Why not? Take it. Yeah, we started checking. We saw these little white worms running around. If you start checking, not all of them.
But October doesn't eat the raspberries. He doesn't eat them. There's not lots.
Well,
it has not seen one yet that doesn't have.
Well, it all depends on the season. It depends where it comes from,
right.
And it depends. Sometimes they're more infested than others. As I've pointed out, here we have less issues than the East Coast, where there's more humidity. But anyway, if you want to have them, you can, as long as you know how to thoroughly check, and every vegetable is different. Okay, so we have here a situation which the Ramah says not only does it apply to eggs, but it applies to dagim, to fish, that if you cook them together, and you did find a dag tomeh, right? You may have a problem here, depending on how you poured them all out. Okay, even though that's the problem that is presented, we said that the Mechaber and the Ramah both seem to follow the shita that b'di eved everything is okay. All right? So this is really a lechatchila. You poured it out. No, we're not talking about raspberries right now. Let's move on to Taaruvot here. B'di eved here, you poured them all out. You poured it all out, and you did it slowly, which could be the problem. B'di eved, you don't have to be concerned. So let's just briefly go over the main highlights, the main points of that halacha, and then we're going to see base. We have here a machlokes aposkim, rishonim actually. You have the Rivo, and then you have Rabbeinu Baruch, you have Rabbeinu Shimshon, who offers another explanation. The Rivo seems to be concerned that the dag, let's talk about dag for a moment, if it was left behind at the very, very end, that even though you poured out some, and that which you poured is safe for now, because there was shishim to begin with, that which remains in the pot is in trouble. There's no shishim against it. It's still hot. There's tam. There's roitev. There's sauce. It's hot, and so forth. Now they've all become usher because the dag tam is still there. Now you continue to pour out, and guess what? That which you're pouring out now, which has blias of iser, is going to usher that which is in the ka'ara that you thought was safe. And we gave various explanations as how that could happen. Why should that which is coming out right now in the second shift aser that which is in the ke'ara, according to the Ravo? Kli sheni, everybody seems to hold here at least, that it's not mevashel. And the ke'ara, which is the bowl, is a kli sheni. So we gave various explanations. It could be that we're talking at the very least, only with a klipa. The problem is only a klipa, because now that you're pouring the hot roitev over that which is in the bowl, it's iroi, so it's going to be mevashel kedei klipa, and that roitev is also because there's no shishim. And even Rabbeinu Baruch would agree with that. The Shach explains, even though Rabbeinu Baruch says it's all mutter, and I will get to it in a moment. But as far as the klipa, according to the Shach, it's possible that Rabbeinu Baruch will say that it does aser kedei klipa. You know, if you only want to be macham kedei klipa, you may have quite a few that would agree with you. If you want to aser more than kedei klipa, then of course you have a machlokes here. But we said that the Rivah says that if you took out, if it's possible that the dak tome came out first, then there's no problem. The dak tome came out first, no problem. Even though later on you mix it, you won't be it's a klisheni. Even though later on you mix it, it's a klisheni by the time it's in the kara. He has a concern maybe that dak tome or the froch remained towards the very, very end. And if it remains towards the end, it causes problems with what's in the bowl, the dera, and later on, when you pour it into the kara, what was there first? That was okay, because it was shishim. So what are the reasons that are given for the Rivah making aser that which is in the kara? That which is in the kedera is aser because you still have a kli rishon, you still have roitev, so you have tam. But what about later on as he's pouring in? What could be the problem? So some of the explanations given to explain the Rivah is that now we don't recognize which fish are which. Now we don't recognize which fish are which. We had kosher fish, now we have fish with blias. But that would be one concern. The other concern was, of course, the irui. What does the Rabbeinu Baruch have to say about this? You know, we don't recognize. Who needs to recognize it? It's batel b'roiv. In the ke'ara, not the kedera, in the ke'ara, we have bitul b'roiv. Chad b'trein. Yavish b'yavish. No problem. What should it?
And then it was
roitev, yeah. So here, there should roiv. What could you say about the roiv? You could say birya. You can't say birya because we're talking about an isur balua here. Birya is not a birya if the isur is just an isur balua. So that's a very, very good explanation of why we don't have to be concerned. And b'di'evet, we're not concerned.
Fish was
So as far as the roitev, what happened to the roitev? There are various scenarios here. In this Seif Aleph, there are various scenarios on how you did it. I don't want to make it too complex, so I'm giving you maybe one or two scenarios. But a second scenario would be that before you poured out the rest, you poured out the sauce separately. And all you were left with was fish. And then you poured the fish. You don't have roitev now in the... Right. Otherwise, the roitev is aser. That's coming down. Yeah. So the Taz speaks a little bit about the roitev coming down, brings down a Yam Shlomo, that it's only a little bit that's left over. But anyway, it complicates things a little bit. So I want to leave it out. Yeah.
From the dog, if it was against the other.
Right.
From the source, the amount of the bouillon should be here?
No, we talk. The shishim is between everything.
Right.
Right. The shishim between.
We're only worried about the bouillon.
What was your reasoning with respect to berries?
Yeah.
What makes it so small?
Because among other things, you can't see.
Well, the blia.
And the bouillon is coming out of.
Are you talking about the blias in the fish that they already absorbed? The ones that remained, you have 20 left in the pot. They were balea. So that's a regular blia of regular tam. Yeah. Unless you're talking about the blia kedei klipa, when you're pouring on top. Yeah, that's very, very small. And that is not a big concern. But in the pot, fish that does not amount to 60, and therefore is boilea, it becomes aser. Here we have the advantage or the leniency that they all got mixed up and there's roiv.
In other words, we don't say portion to how much fish from the pot and roiv.
Right.
Proportionally also as much of the isser from the pot together with the head. We pretend as though the isser still was in the pot. And now we no longer have C against
right,
that
that's correct.
Isser.
Yeah.
Because that's the worst case scenario.
That's the worst case scenario, and that's the concern of the Rivah. Right.
It's like falling into pots.
Right. So anyway, that was the main issue in Seif Aleph. But what was interesting, however, is not just the scenario and the concern, is the various explanations given as to why it should be mutter. There was like 4 or 5 reasons given. It's not just of bitul beroiv. Yeah. But the bitul beroiv obviously does present a separate problem, because as the Shach explains in the Primigodim also speaks about it, bitul beroiv is possible by dogging because you tend to cook a lot of fish together, versus eggs, not as much.
You would at least 61 against the Asr.
Right, besides the 61, according to the way the Shach explains it, but we'll get to that. Maybe we'll leave that in a moment. How it would work out. But the Premier Godam has a good point that if it's not shayach, it's not shayach. I mean, so with eggs, he says it may not be shayach if all you're using, if the only explanation you give for being matir is roiv. You may not have that roiv if you're dealing with eggs, but you may have it with fish.
So if you find it, you have to throw out normally all the eggs.
Yeah, we'll see. There are other explanations as to why it's motor b'di'evet. But if it would be only because of roiv, the Pri Megadim says that would not work with eggs. It could only work with fish, because that's the mitzius. That's the way people don't
unless
cook.
You had enough in.
Unless you had
But
exactly.
if you were pouring
Caterer.
Right.
if you were there,
Yeah, caterer.
if we had the situation where you were pouring and some left, some not, and it was only when the Eroi was left,
Right.
and you only take off a klipa,
That was what question was.
Yeah.
Isn't the
shell, so that you would only have to shell the eggs that have.
You got rid of the.
What? No, that's not.
So why not?
No, because it's gone beyond the shell.
No, we're talking about Eroi.
Eroi,
Yeah.
when it's Eroi, you only do the klipa.
Your mitzvah lashon kedei klipa.
Not
Right.
in the pot,
Yeah.
in the bowl.
Oh, in the bowl.
Yeah, Eroi.
You don't
Yeah.
have to shell it,
Right.
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 right?
Yeah, you're right. In that case, it would be so much of a
So if
problem.
you take off
Yeah.
the shells, you should be done. Klipa is a klipa.
Possibly, yeah.
I mean, the shells are probably more thick than
Yeah.
what's normally called a klipa.
Well, it's about that. It is about a klipa. The problem is with the eggs that even though they have shells, I mean, in Hilchas Beitzim, he discusses the difference between having the shell in them versus not having the shell. Sometimes it can make it, but here it doesn't make a difference. Even if you have the shell, it just goes through.
That's when you're cooking it.
And when you're cooking it, that's
If
how
you have-
strong the cooking
But if
is.
you have- But it's only
Yeah.
kedei klipa anyway.
Yeah, you wouldn't have that problem.
So you
Yeah.
only need to put the shell.
Yeah, only with bishul do you say it's strong enough to go through.
Right.
Or that's what I believe.
I mean,
The halacha is,
you've
yeah.
got to take off the shell anyway. I got to eat
Yeah,
it with the shell.
exactly.
Once you take off the shell, it should have been the klipa.
Right.
There's no klipa remaining. After the shell is off, there is no more klipa.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, the Mechaber here doesn't speak about that scenario. He's only concerned about bittul over here, leftovers, not having enough shishim in the vater. But in that situation, if you're machmir and the only chumrah is a klipa, you wouldn't have that problem. So with the Yore, apparently, yeah. So anyway, there are various other explanations given as to why b'di'evet this would not be a problem.
Now, where's the b'di'evet? What do we
You
call
didn't.
that?
You did not pour it out properly. You didn't wait till it cools off.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So you had the tummy fish.
Or eggs.
Or eggs.
Yeah. Rabbeinu Shimshon says that mi'ikara, we don't have to be concerned that the dag, the fish, remains at the end. You don't have to.
Because of the.
He says isura, berubai isa. The isur to be found, we assume, it's okay to assume that the isur will be found where the majority is. You took out the majority, so it's already out. It did not remain behind. No problem. So therefore, we don't have to be concerned. The Shach, however, picks on this one. He says, "Oh, if that's what you say, then you would need to have a tremendous amount of fish or eggs here. You would need to have 120, close to 120, because what you're saying is that the roiv is already out, and what's inside would not be enough. Perhaps would have a problem with. In other words, it wouldn't be shishit. It would be 59, right? So, in other words, you would need a large amount. You would need a large amount to be able to satisfy this hesber, this explanation that, you know what, the isser is berubai, and therefore you don't have to be concerned. Yeah, okay, fine, as long as we have close to 120.
When the isser is in the boy,
Right.
then in the baru boy, I still need 60 again.
Well, in the pot you have to have at least 60, right?
So what remains behind in the pot until.
He just holds of a rule. There's a cloud that the isser will always be found with the majority.
Right.
So what are you concerned about? What's left behind? You know, it's not there. You know, it will not be. It will not be there. it will be.
So until I have the majority out of the pot, I still stay in the pot.
Well, sure, yeah.
So I can't have a majority whereby the majority will leave behind it.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
I'm sorry, with a minority until the
minority.
majority will leave.
Right. So that's what you're saying. Based on that, you have approximately close to 120, potentially, in order to satisfy this
So
explanation.
in other words, if I had 90 and I removed 31, then 59 stay behind.
The Isser is there.
And the Isser is there.
It's
It's
there.
59.
Right.
And it's not with the 31 because the 31 is still a minority.
It's a minority. Yeah.
So what I have to have is when I removed up to 59, say even 60. When
60.
I removed 60, it's nicht dahin, nicht daher.
No, it's
Then I have
with
majority.
it's with the 60. You removed 60.
Both of them are 60 now. So I don't know where they're in the pot or out of the pot.
Yeah, all right.
Once I removed 61,
A little more,
then I can
yeah.
assume that it's with
Yeah,
the other. So
exactly. A little bit
until
more.
61, I still need 60 in the pot.
Or approximately, exactly. So anyway, that's the way the Shach explains Rabbeinu Shimshon Hesber as to why B'di'evet the Ramah says it's okay. Now, but what's interesting, the Ramah doesn't say those. It doesn't say those words, but he says something very similar. And this is brought in the Torah's Chatas. He explains it a little bit better. Actually, the Torah's Chatas is another explanation altogether. But here in the Ramah, he says like this: "The lo machzikinan isur loymar the nishar ha'isur beloy samach." We're not machzik an isur. In other words, we don't say for sure that there was an isur. Who's to make the assumption? Why make such assumptions? Is it with theorems? In geometry, you establish a theorem. This is the way it needs to be. Oh, there, yes, it's a law. It's a rule. It's a given. Here, why make it a given that there for sure is an isur? Not even a suffix. Why create it? Lo machzikin. That's what it says. Lo machzikin an isur loymar the nishar ha'isur beloy shishim. You don't know that. If you know that, yes, but why suspect that? Why think like that? We don't say that. We don't subscribe to that. That there's possibly an isur remain in the pot and there's no shishim at any given point. No.
In other words, we don't need to conduct ourselves in a manner that will exclude all this. There has to be some reality indicating that case occurred in order.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Now, this works very well. In some ways, this is similar. Some of the Achronim say, "Wait a minute, this is very similar to Rabbeinu Shimshon." Similar, but not necessarily similar. Where would there be a nafkamina between the two? If there's no roiv. In other words, if there's no roiv outside, and you still go strictly by the words of the Ramah, that lo machzikin, that you don't have to have a roiv.
Right. It's not dependent because you don't
it's
have
not dependent on roiv, exactly. You're not being machzik the nisu to say that it's still there. But some say it's pretty much the same thing, similar to Rabbeinu Shimshon. That why aren't we machzik to say that there is an isur there? Because the isur is with the roiv.
According to Rabbeinu Shimshon,
yes.
On the contrary,
right.
By him it would be a problem. Because
it would be, sure.
That's
right.
And doesn't have 60 against the isur.
Mm-hmm.
I must assume there.
Yeah, that's correct. Another one which is very interesting, in which we've learned already, covered it, is that this is similar to the case where you had a situation of an Isser falling in, Taaruvot, min b'minoi, but it poured out, spilled out, and you don't know if there was Shishim, but you know there was Roiv. Remember that one? Well, that's great, it's min b'minoi, midaraisa, all you need is Roiv. So it's a suffix, the suffix Rabbana lekula. So here it's a suffix. On what? On a Rabbana. In other words, it's a suffix lekula. In other words, you're not sure. Wait a minute. Is this min be'minoi? Or how about maybe it's min be'eno minoi? We have a dog tummy, right? So that was the question that is raised a little bit here. Could we say really min be'minoi here, or maybe it's min be'sheno? The Shach has a whole discussion about this. Is a dog tummy considered she'eno mino legabe other dogim? Now, the reason why he says that he is of the opinion that their tam is not the same. They're actually very different tam. Rabbi Kiva Eger, I think, brings here a raya. I think it's not his. He brings it in with the base main. A raya from Rashi and Chulin that dagim of all kinds would be considered minoi.
No matter what.
Right. It could be considered minoi. In other words, it's inferred from the Gemara, because the Gemara could have said something else it didn't. So we infer it that obviously that they're min b'minoi. Otherwise, why did the Gemara choose as a min be'ein amino the example of dogim? It had to use a different kind of more of an extreme example of min b'shein amino. It could have easily said different kinds of fish being together, but it didn't. So it could be inferred from that Rashi or the Gemara holds that dogim tmeim and dogim toharim are considered min b'minoi. But that's a very good point. That is something that I would maybe spend more time digging to see. Yeah, it's a good point, good question. What do we say min be'ein amino? But this would only work if you hold that this is min b'minoi. Yes.
The fact specifically by strips of
Yeah.
wouldn't that tell us that because it has a different time?
Why would they wait to buy this fish and that fish if it all has the same?
They're all fishy. They're all really. You have to really be a good connoisseur. Now, I haven't tasted Baruch Hashem dag tome.
No, but there are people who go to the specific store and they buy a specific fish.
So it doesn't have to be dafka dag tome. But even tahor, his question applies even with dag tahor.
There are people who buy trout, there are people who buy tuna.
Yeah, but remember, we're talking about the tam here.
That's what
And the tam is not necessarily the tam of the fish, because when you eat a fish, salmon, it's not carp.
Right.
Its consistency and everything tastes differently. But here we're talking about tam. We're concerned about the tam here, and the tam is not necessarily that different. That's the crux of the machloket here. Is the tam very, very different because make it a different name? Because we're concerned with the tam. We're not going to eat the dag tome here, right? It's a birya, right? We're concerned about the tam. So, does that render it a sheinamin or not?
Why would it be a birya? Wouldn't it have been chopped off?
Oh, okay. If it is chopped off, it's a different story. Yeah, but
If you chop off the head,
yeah, then it's not right.
is it all?
Yeah, right. Anyway, another example that was given was something that we were eventually covering. Kuf Yud Aleph, mamish towards the end, where you have two pots sitting somewhere, and you have a kazais of Isra falling into one of them. You don't know which one it fell into. Each one only has 30. But eventually they're going to be combined into 60. Between the two of them, they will. But you don't know where it fell in. So you say since they're going to eventually be combined, it's mutter. So here too, eventually it's going to be all together. Perhaps it's mutter. So again, the Shach has a whole discussion on that too. And this explanation, that's only min b'mino, not necessarily min b'she'en amino. Min b'mino, there's no difference in the tam. Maybe you can say that, but that klal you may not be able to use when it's a situation of min b'she'en.
So then the requirement would be the Rabbanan anyway. So then you can say that the will combine. So you look at it as yes. What if it was simply?
Why?
Because we said 60, right? There's
Right.
30 in one, 30 in another.
Right.
But min mino.
It doesn't have to be 30. It could be more. It's just less than 60.
But
Right.
30 is a fish.
Right.
But min b'mino, but min b'she'en, but min mino is 60 only to Rabbanan, though, right? So we say simple majority
Okay.
is enough.
Right.
So maybe that's why you have if it's a min b'mino. Then this is the Rabbanan end. So since they all be combined, I can be generous and clear and say that it's already okay. Because according to the one that also is Hanan B'Shari Surah. So because in the future it's going to be combined, what's going to happen? Right now there's only 30 again.
Right.
So it's become all 30 have become Hanan. So then I'm going to have 30 against 30, which the 30 is Hanan. So the Ramash, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So the Ramah, for instance, anyone who holds Hanan B'Shari Surah would not be able to say anything about, since later they'll be combined.
But it's still Midrabanan. Shari Surim. It would still be a Derabanan.
Right.
Right.
But it
It's all
doesn't
Derabanan.
be combined later. Because what I'm combining later is a piece of Hanan and a Vela with a heter.
But that's when you need to have that cloud. It's a special cloud that eventually you will learn that if everything is being mistarif anyway, it's similar, but it's not the same as being mevatel and nisr, which lechatchila you can't do. But here it's happening because the cloud allows you to do so. Okay, but we'll leave it.
Would you also say that in the case of?
Yeah, because in the end it's gone. That's the question. That's what the Shach has a question whether you would say that it mean too.
So
That cloud,
You
yeah.
learned before.
Right.
That was exactly my question.
Right.
You can't move out the leaders.
You can't what?
You can't add.
No, right. You cannot.
So then how can we say when you combine them, you're mevatling the issue?
Yeah, but you were intending to combine them anyway. So in other words, they're going to be mistav. You didn't plan on being mevatel the isser. You planned on just combining the two anyway. So it's not a real bit of isser. Eventually we'll get to it. It's an interesting cloud. It's a very different kind of rule.
But we're only saying that in the Rabbanan and the Rice of the Shach.
Yeah, the Shach actually makes a distinction between an isser deraisa and an isser derabbanan. Yeah,
Min b'mino against min b'she'en.
that too. He speaks about that too. Plus, he says he would be more lenient if we were talking about an Isur D'Rabbanan versus an Isur D'Oraisa.
And Isur D'Rabbanan b'mino mino, or Isur D'Rabbanan b'mino?
He wants to say only b'min b'mino it works.
So
This
only
explanation.
b'mino when it's an Isur D'Rabbanan.
He says both. He says if you want to say it, it would only work b'min b'mino. And besides, halacha l'maisa, he's mafchin. It makes a distinction between Isur D'Rabbanan where you could be more lenient.
So then you have a shvus loose.
Even if it's min be'she'inu min the person, right?
Aha.
Yeah.
But you're adding that,
Yeah.
or he says that?
I think he says that. Yeah.
Otherwise, you'd have a shvus. You'd have a mean.
No shvus here.
Why is that?
No, here shvus is by Hilchos Shabbos.
Exclusive. Don't have shvus.
Yeah.
Isn't that anything but Shabbos?
Yeah, you don't call it a shvus here. But what you're saying is something similar. I understand what you're saying is
What
it's
is
a D'Rabbanan versus a D'Oraisa.
It's a D'Rabbanan.
Yeah.
And it's a D'Rabbanan, and on top of
And on top of an Isur D'Rabbanan, right.
And why is
No,
it
the
only-
term shvus is by
Yeah.
Shabbos. Shvus melashon Nashevet,
Nashevet.
Shabbat, Shabbat.
Oh,
Yeah.
So it's from Shabbat.
Of course, of
I always
course.
thought that, but
Yeah. Sure. That's what it
so
comes
what
from.
does it have to do with the Rabbanan and the Rabbanan? Why Shabbat with the Rabbanan and the Rabbanan? It's a different topic.
It's a different topic. It's just, when you're making additional chumras concerning the same concept of shvut, right? Of basically resting.
So
on Shabbat.
I always understood it to be
Abstaining.
the Rabbanan and the Rabbanan.
Yeah, well, here it is, yeah. All right, anyway, what's the big nafkamina between the various explanations? A big nafkamina would be whether it could apply equally as well to Beitzim as it does to the Dogim. Some of the explanations, like the one that you're not sure if there was Shishim or not, but you know there was Roiv, if that's the explanation that it's similar to that it's a Safek D'Rabbanan, that could apply to Beitzim as well. Right? So depending which Hesber you give, that would make a difference. With Roiv, we say it could be a problem with the eggs. You may not have the Roiv. But with the fish, you would. So depending which explanation you give, it may work with both or not. Let's go on to the next seif. It's just one seif. And it sounds a little bit familiar to us because we've spoken about it. Zvuv v'chayotze bo midvarim ha'meusim shenafsho shel adam katza b'hem. A fly and similar insects that people are repelled or don't like. Shenimtza b'tafshel. You found a spider, a fly, a flea floating on top of the soup. What would you do, by the way?
By a flea, I would say, well.
By the way, if you're in the kitchen, don't tell anybody, okay? Because they're not going to want to eat it.
Oh.
It's brought down in this forum that the ones who go into this particular area of halacha, that in the past there have been people who had simply, if a little fly fell in, regardless of what the halacha says that it's water, they would just throw away the whole thing. And it's not necessary.
Now, are we talking about still complete?
Yeah.
Is it a barrier type situation?
No. The fly you can't eat. Even if you're Chinese.
No, but a barrier is going to...
you should not eat the fly.
But a barrier is going to answer even 1,000.
No, but the fly you're going to remove. So we're not concerned about the bittul of the fly. We're talking about the plita here. I mean, I didn't explain maybe. We're talking about the plita here.
So the fly was removed?
The tam.
And we need now 60 days.
The tam. Yeah, the tam. Do we or do we not? We don't. According to the Mechaber and the Ramah.
So we don't need stickers.
A lot of Achrayim say you do. It's a machlekes, but the general consensus, from what I have seen in the Mechaber, Ramah, and Rashba, is that you don't have to worry yourself about anything which is pogum me'atzmoi. Pogum me'atzmoi is a term that we used before, remember? When we talk about Nisim Tam Lefgam, that there are certain insects that, on their own, to begin with, they are pogum.
Are you making a distinction against where the Taaruvot becomes not a tasty, even though the other stuff is tasty? So you're saying that this only applies to the kid. It's not only the mixture that's tasty, but the insect itself is not tasty.
No, there is a difference between things that are poigim the tafshil.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
If you mix it, if you put it in there, like the question was
Like
with
it itself
achbar,
tastes okay,
like the
but
question with mice in sheikher or wine, right? And there are certain things that are pogum that they in themselves
don't taste good.
Don't taste good,
Right? Yes.
And the more so that they're going to make whatever the tafshil not taste good. So that was a big chiluk that we saw in the Ramah, and the Shach speaks a little bit about it, and others as well. And it's a chiluk that is accepted. That things that are pogum me'atzmam have less of a concern concerning birya. In other words, it's bottle.
Oh, wow. What does it mean less of a, what does it mean it's bottle?
It's pogum. What's the concern by birya? Or what's the concern by any? The concern is the tam. right?
No.
No.
By a birya, we're saying. It's
Anything,
enough.
even by a birya. What's the
It's no longer
concern?
the tam.
Yeah, but what's the concern?
That it should be enough. It's
No. Of course, we're machmir by a birya.
Yeah.
But what's the essence of the problem? The essence is tam.
To believe.
If there's no good tam there, if you had no tam and no good tam, then it wouldn't have a din of a birya. Remember, birya is midrabanan, right? The whole isser here, the Torah asks us to eat a fly.
In other words, you're saying the good taste is appreciated for it in the category.
Yeah, the Torah.
Something it doesn't
Right.
have a good
What's
taste,
the
not even a
what's the Torah asser? The Torah asks to us to eat a fly that's pogum. What's the isser? The mamoshes. You cannot eat a fly.
The tam cake is the rice, you say.
One second. Forget about the tam right now. The Torah tells us you cannot eat flies. You cannot eat certain things. It doesn't have the simanim of kashrus. Okay? It's a sheretz or whatever. Now, in order for it to become a birya, that's a whole different story. It has to have certain qualifications.
Let me, I'm now
Right.
confused a little bit. Didn't we say the Torah assers not kosher,
Right?
but lashes one only receives ice?
Okay, that's
By a
shiurim.
area one receives the lashes already when it's a kazayis.
Right, okay, yeah.
And from that the rabbis learned, therefore it's not misbatal.
Right, of course, yeah. Yeah, in other words, we see a connection. We see a connection between, how the Torah was machmir even on a small creature. Right.
Size of a little.
Right. Now, but that's assuming it has tam. If it has a tam pogum, as the Rashba explains, that's not usher. In other words, not usher to make it. In other words, it doesn't qualify to be a birya. And therefore, if it were to get mixed up in the Kedera and you can't recognize it, it's nismaich, you don't have to worry about it.
So let me ask you a question. When you say it's if
It's bottle.
It's a tam pagum, it's not asur. You're not saying that the Torah doesn't asur it.
No,
Of course, the Torah asurs killing a fly.
sure, but we have
what is it that the
we have
Torah does
we
not
have a
say?
concern now.
And that's what-
We have a concern now that it's that it may give off a
Before we
tam,
go there,
right?
the lashes, if one did eat, a fly is smaller than a size.
All right.
So the lashes that are given by the king, something smaller, will those lashes be given in something that's very too?
No,
So,
there's no
so someone who eats a fly would not receive lashes.
would not receive it. No,
Ah.
if it's pogum atzmuin.
So that's still Torah right here. Torah law. That's not the Rabbanan.
Midrabanan it's also. There are certain
You're
things
only
that
dealing with the
You're
pun-
only
you're only
Right.
dealing with the punishment.
Right.
You're not dealing with certain.
right.
Right, the lashes. We're
Right.
talking about the lashes.
That-
Yeah.
it
Yeah,
doesn't-
but remember that there's an isser, but there is an isser to eat an entire birya. Okay? To eat. I mean, there's still an isser in the
There's
Torah.
an ism in a Torah
Right.
to eat anything.
Right,
Because
exactly.
half a kazais of anything
Exactly.
that's
So
awesome.
there's still an isser.
The
question,
specialty of the
the
beer-
question would be whether it would be an isser deraisa or derabanan.
The question was, if I remember correctly, when we were
Right.
talking about berries, that one received lashes. Normally, one would not receive the punishment of lashes
Right.
if one eats less than a kazais.
Right. With biryas, you would.
The birya
Because the
one
birya
would-
itself,
So
yes.
this shows you the importance of a birya.
Right.
And based on that, the Rabbanan then said, then it's also not misbatal.
That's correct. Now, but let's go on. So if it were to be mixed into a taruvas, if it's a real birya, it's not bottle, midrabanan. If it's not considered a birya for some reason, because it's cut up, or because it's tampogu me'atzmoi, right? Then it's not a birya. It is bottle. It is bottle. So here, with a zvuv, or similar insects, that are pogu me'atzmoi, right? The mechaber holds, and so does the Ramah, not everybody, the Shach doesn't go by this, that the plita is not a problem. These things that nafshu shel adam kotza bohem,
You don't even eat six.
zorkon, you throw them out, that tafshil mutar she'em plitas dvorim ela pegumim oiseres. Very simple. Now, let's finish in the Ramah first, then we'll go back to explain. B'chein aminuk poshut, the Ramah says, af al gav deish machmirin, some are machmir. Divrei makilin ikar, is Yosef psak posak kerashba. Now he brings down here in parentheses that Beis Yosef is like the Rashba, because the Rashba is very important here. The Rashba is the one that brings down this halacha, that all of the certain insects, you don't have to be worried about their plita. And he learns it out from Achbar. In other words, Achbar is a problem, possibly, but Zvuv is not. Others want to learn from the Rambam, that the way the Rambam learns that Zvuvim may be a problem. It's a question of if is Achbar the only one that's poigim? Who's to tell you, they say? Who's to tell the Rambam? I mean, they ask from the Rashba. Rashba, whoever told you that a Zvuv is pogum? Who says? I mean, we know from the Gemara. The Gemara tells us about an achbar. It's a problem. What kind of an achbar? What kind of a drink? What kind of a liquid? Is it poigim or not? But the Gemara does not give a list of all the insects and all the things of which one it is. And by the way, and because of that, even though we are makel by zvuv and we're makel by similar insects, we're not makel by toloim. We're makel by ants. We're makel by zvuvim, but we're not makel by toloim with the worms. So therefore, if you made kompot, you know what a kompot is? Yeah, you know, kompot, yeah, right? And you found toloim in the apples or in the whatever fruits in the plums, it could be a problem.
Why? Once it went through the food processor.
No, it didn't go through the food processor. No, kompot is you're making a pot. It's like a soup, and you put plums, apricots, slices of pears and apples.
And you cook it.
And sugar. Yeah.
Don't you
and lemons.
shred it?
No, you don't shred it.
Oh.
Yeah. So.
Like applesauce would not be.
Right. Yeah. So the Rashba is medame zvuv to achbor, right? Not everybody compares it to, but Elohim, even he and the Rekech, they all say that it would be a problem. You would need shish kineged to be mevatel the plitas of the toloim if you cook them all together. Not only can you not eat obviously the worms, but you would have to deal with the plita of these things. Now I agree, they may be so small that usually you would have more than shishim, but still it's something that you would have to consider. You wouldn't just take it out and not worry about it. You would have to worry about it like any iser that fell in, because what the Rashba and others that go with him agree with that shita, that its poigim is only zvuvim and I think nemolim, or similar insects that are, the toloim don't have that.
Well, in Italy, they actually eat crawling all over.
Are you sure they're crawling?
According to my eyewitness,
yeah.
Who is out now,
yeah.
supposedly they're.
Yeah.
But quick question with the fly.
Right.
Now, if the fly was not located, can you, based on noten tam lefgam, eat the? You saw a fly into the.
Yeah.
You know there is somewhere a fly. You can't find it.
Right.
It has not been moved. He talks here about it has
Yeah.
been moved.
We learned before that you have to make an effort to be mesanin, to filter it out. If you know it's there, but you can't. There are certain things you can't. It's completely lost. And that would depend if it's a birya or not.
Right. So
Right.
now by a fly,
Right.
completely lost, I'd be misan in it.
You don't have to worry about it.
And if I had to try to be misan,
Yes.
because it's a barrier?
Only no, not because it's
Any
a
kind
birya.
of
Any
issue.
kind of issue you have to try to be mesanin if sinu might help. Sure. Just because you can't, doesn't mean you just forget about it. If you can be mesanin,
So
then
if it was a worm that I saw crawl into the soup and I can't find it throughout the whole soup, but if it's a fly, I can eat.
No, with the worm also, it all depends if it's chopped up or not.
No, a whole worm. It was
Yeah,
still
sure, it's a
crawled
problem.
into the soup
Sure.
and remained in there.
Sure.
I can't find it.
Yeah, it's a problem. Yeah, we learned that. We
So now I
covered
have
that
to
before.
pour it out because of barrier.
We covered that before. Anytime you have a birya, just because you can't find it, it's lost. It's usher, unless it's chopped up. Loses the din of birya.
But by the fly, according to those that hold that
Mi'atzmoi.
So therefore, even if the fly is still, I can't.
Yeah,
find
it's
it,
not a
then I
problem.
can eat.
Now, would people eat it anyway? That's another question. So that's why he tells us you don't have to worry about it. Now, what's interesting is I found in the Beis Yosef, very interesting. He brings down in the name of the Mordechai, who brings it in the name of the Rekeach, that is zvuv, as opposed to other insects, has no flavors. Ke'etz be'almahu. It's like a piece of wood. In other words, it doesn't really have a plita.
If it doesn't have a taste plita, then you say it's pogum ba'atzma.
No, we said it's no. It's a good question, but because we need to know if it's a berry or not, whether it's going to be bottle or not. And forget about tam right now. But now we're talking about the mamashas of the iser. You can't eat the mamashas of iser even if it has no tam, right? So if it's pogum atzmoi, remember it's different than plita. Okay, pogum atzmoi means it doesn't have a good taste. Then it doesn't have a din birya, but it doesn't really have a plita of it. It doesn't really give out anything.
So it has a taste
So
of its own if you were to bite on it.
So if you cooked it,
Interesting.
it doesn't really have any. It didn't emits some flavor, but you still have to remove it. You can't eat it.
So if you bite on it itself, you would know, but if you bite something that was going to be noticeable in that.
I guess so. I mean, he wouldn't give off anything. That's what the Basar says, yeah. It doesn't give any tam b'chlal, he says. Right. But in Pei Dalet, if you learn Hilchos Toloim, in Pei Dalet, you see, but that's not the case of Toloim. You know, Toloim do have some sort of tam. Yeah. What is that? Taz, I think, is Mekel over there. But anyway, so that's an interesting difference.
If it was on the fire, and then the zuf.
Right. By the way, you know how to remove it on Shabbos?
Yeah, some soup.
Some soup, yeah. It shouldn't be a boira problem. You remove it with a little bit of liquid. That's okay.
If it's on the fire,
yeah. Uh-huh.
What does it do to does it do anything to, we don't worry about the utensil?
Oh, okay. So that's the next, let's finish up with that.
Okay.
And that's the minig and the shanos minig. Okay, but vim lokach ima kaf. Your question. If you took with the spoon a dag tome min agdera, or shad dover she'eino poigim, we talk about it now, going back now to something which is not poigim. Also lahachzir a kaf like there, don't put back the kaf into the gdera. V'michziro, if you did put it back, tzorach shishim min agdera neged ha'isur, neged original isur shishim, right? Below neged kol kaf, but you don't need against the whole kaf. Why? The Rama says because we don't hold the law. Gabe kli chaticha nasas nevela. Not everybody agrees. Remember the shach? You would say maybe at least legabe the blias, not legabe the kli itself, but legabe the blias. You would say chaticha nasa nevela. But then, in order for chaticha nasa nevela to be true, the heter sitting in the keli would have to be a benyoima. If the heter in the kli is not a benyoima, then you're not going to have chaticha nas nevela in the blias. But remember the shach says that the hefset meruba, we don't say chanan in blias. Remember that? Blias. To say chanan in blias is an extra chumrah, so in hefset meruba he's lenient. But that still is very important to keep in mind that you would need to have that, the heter would have to be a benyoima in order for that to affect the blias of the kli. Otherwise, you can calculate against the original Isser here. You know how much it is. You know it was a fly. You know, not in this case a fly, but you know it was a fish. So you know how much you're dealing with. You don't have to worry about the blias if they're not benyoima. But if they are benyoima and you say chanan and blias, then you have more to consider. Besides the fish, you have, or the liquid, you have the blias in the kaf. Avalim hoyo me'at min atavshil. If you still have a little bit left in the spoon or ladle and you're putting it back, then of course, the little bit that you took out, and now you're putting it back, that in the ladle, in the spoon, that little bit of tafshil is already chanan. It has become asr. So now when you're putting it back, you need shishim against the whole thing, against even that little bit of liquid. Sure, that would make sense.
All you would have to do is to wash it off.
What is that?
Or if you took it out, what to do is wash the ladle.
Yeah, let's go back to the first sif. That remember with the fish, even though the Ramos said that he brought down there's a machloikes, and we say that it's not also b'di'evet. He says even those who say it's also ein lesser kelim shenizbash lubo. The kelim himself, even those who are like the rivah, who say it's also maybe the fish was left behind and it's a problem. Even according to them, you don't have to worry about the kelim shenizbashu. Why? If the food is aser, the kelim is aser. No. The ma'amidim akli al cheskosoi. We make an assumption that the kli remains mutter. Wow. So the question is, why don't we say ma'amidim ha'oichel al cheskosoi? Keli, you want to be lenient, but not with the food? So the Shach speaks about this. The Shach brings down the Maril. Why do we say ma'amidim makli al cheskosoi? The kli, you don't have to worry about it. Its chazaka is what? That it's mutter. But the food, you're not ma'amid al cheskosoi. So he says like this, by kli, the only time we say it's okay, that you don't have to kasher it, is le'achar me'is le'is. Le'achar me'is le'is, it's going to be pogum. And even though you're not allowed to use a kli that's pogum, lechatchila, it's pogum, use it. No. Otu ben yoimo. Remember there's a cloud, you must have covered that in Basar v'chalov. Eino ben yoimo, otu ben yoimo, we're goizer. Right? It's a treif in a keli. But it's not ben yoimo. You can't use it lechatchila. You have to kasher it, right? Why? Because we're concerned. even though but the it's okay, so it's an binyom it's pogum, otu ben yomer.
So people don't come confused. They use the same part for both.
Exactly. So, but the Shacham here explains. So, what he goes further. He says what the Ramah meant is that by kelim we say it's okay. You don't have to kasher it because it's talking about la'acha me'isle. The keli is going to be pogum. With food, you can't say that. Food does not become pogum. Once food is berleah, even if it's 10 days later, it's still aser. You don't have that advantage of pegima, even though pegima is still a derabanan is aser, but here you would be mekel. So that's how the Shem de Maril explains the difference between why we're maime de kli al cheskasoy, and you don't have to kasher it, even according to ones who aser, right? And the food, according to those who aser, of course, it's aser if you did not remove it properly. We like the Mechaber Ramah, we are not concerned with the Eved. Remember the various reasons. But he says even according to those who aser, the Kli would be mutter because Mamid no soches koso. So the Shach explains the reason why you can say that on the Kli is because we're talking about Achar Me'ez Le'eh. So you have the advantage of Pegima which you don't have in food. Not just a point or two that we left out from the previous Seif. The Taz brings down that if you remove the eggs with a spoon, one by one, as opposed to removing them all together, and then you find that one is aser, we have to be concerned that maybe when you remove the first egg, that was the one that had the efruach. So, if that's the case, the issue right now is not about the other leftover eggs. Use the spoon. The spoon became aser, okay? And then when you went and put it back, you asered everything else too. So he says it would not be a good idea to remove every egg one at a time with a spoon, because putting back the spoon could be a problem. Anyway, not everybody goes with this.
That spoon.
Yeah, obviously, yeah. That's what he says. But you know what? Based on this Ramah, I guess this would also require a little bit of Tzorachiyah. Based on this Ramah, the way the Shach explains it, why shouldn't we just say this is not a problem? Why don't we say? The reason. I see. I think I know why. Because here you for sure, there is a for sure isser here. Okay, that's the difference. By Beitzim, when you remove it, and you did find an efrach, you did remove the efrach in the spoon. You see the difference? You can't say machzikin here. That's why the Taz says that. By the spoon, you actually held the efrach. You just don't know which one it was. So you have a suffix legabe the other eggs. Okay. You went right, but you did hold the efrach in the spoon. That's a for sure. So maybe that's why he's machmir.
So wait a second. So in the case of the efrach, you say that one would have to cut.
No, the spoon would be a problem. You would have to be careful. If you remove the egg, one egg at a time with a spoon, then you put back. Not only that, when you put back the spoon, you would be causing problems with the other eggs if the spoon became aser. Yeah, that's what the Taz says.
So the Taz makes a distinction with respect to the status of the spoon. But I thought he said in our case, the Ramah permits it is an Eil ben Yomo.
No, that's the Kalim. That's the Kalim. Yeah, you're right, but he was talking about the Ramah only mentions the Ka'ara, the pot, not the spoon situation.
The Ka'ara? Yeah.
Now, there is an interesting shach over here. You may want to be aware of it. We did raise this point before, that when you take a ladle or a spoon into the tafshil to take out whatever it is that you're taking out, that ladle, that spoon has a din of kli rishon. And therefore, that is why we have here a problem of blias to be concerned with. In other words, because it's a kli rishon. And blia from the zvuv. But where the Taz has a whole discussion of it in Basar B'cholov, actually, Tzaddik Beis, whether anything you put inside is a kli rishon or a kli sheni. I think he's machmir anyway, just like the Shach. The Pri Megadim, however, goes one step further. He says, what happens, I think his situation is more theoretical. He says, what happens if the food is warming up, you stick in a spoon, but you don't keep it there too long? Remember, we spoke a little bit about that, and you move it right away. So the spoon never became yatzer ledes boy, even though the food is already a bit yatzer ledes boy. Will it make a difference or not? So I think he basically ends by saying, we don't find such distinctions. The Chachamim did not give their the halachas, the shiurim, if you kept it for 5 minutes, it's usher. If you kept it for 7 minutes, for 10 minutes, they didn't tell us the amount of time. They just say it's usher. It's a problem. Unless you know for sure, perhaps, that it was so quick that never did it have to emit or absorb in such a couple seconds. So, but otherwise, it would make a difference, because if the spoon is not yatzeledes boy, then it's not a problem.
Worry about the spoon or the ladle with the zvov. If the zvov does, if you worry about it being a kli rishon, the ladle.
No, according to those, you're right. That's a good question. Only according to those who are concerned with the plitas of a zvov. We are not. Yeah, good point. According to those who don't have a problem with the plita of a zvub, the keli is not a problem, the spoon is not a problem, that you held the fly in, don't worry about it. The food is good, the keli for sure is good, no problem. So good question. Only according to those who, like a shach, who have a problem with the plita of a zvub, would there be a problem with the spoon removing the
So
fly?
how do we pass?
Yeah, so take an atilas yadayim or
When
something else.
When the shach says that
We're makel. The oilam is known to be makel
Even
by flies.
the shach.
The majority of the world is makel. Yeah. He says no. He says we never saw anybody makel. But the Ramah, everybody seems to be saying yes. The Ramah was before the shach.
Remember the Prima Gada at one point says, how can you be makel against a giant?
Yeah. But in here, they says the oil of the whole, all the poiskim. Yeah. Now, just one last point here. What the Ramah said over here, that also lahachsia kaf lakdera. Right, we're talking about dak tome here. V'mihzir tzorch shishim min akdera neged ha'isur. All right, against the original isur. V'lo keneged kol hakaf. On this, you don't need against the whole kaf that held the dak tome here. You need keneged the actual isur that you know approximately how big it is. In this case, as in other cases, when you know the actual size of the isur, when it's not a suffix, that's all you have to measure by. The problem is you get into trouble when you have other blias in a keli from before that are ben yoimo, then they can present a problem, or in basar b'chalav, of chanan, those kinds of situations. But here he says you don't have to be mishayk neged the whole kaf. If you did, so here the Shach says, why? Because you're not meshayr b'kli b'shishim. Okay? What does that mean? In other words, as far as the spoon itself, you're not going to be meshayr b'shishim also not. Against the isur. Why can't you be meshayr? Why don't you just say you have enough, that the spoon is big enough to be mevatel, the whatever it is that you're holding on to it. You're not meshayr b'shishim a keli, a spoon, keneged what you're holding into it. You understand? In other words, the isur that is being absorbed right now in the keli, okay, right now, we don't say that you figure it's going to be mizbatel in the blias that already are in the keli. Because you don't know how many blias are there in the keli. Very simple. There's no way that you can know. So that's how the Shach explains this Ramah. In other words, that besides that you don't need against the whole spoon, in the spoon itself, you can't use that to be meshayr if you have enough to be mevatel, because you don't really know how many blias you have in the spoon. So even though you have some blias coming out from the thing that's tameh, being absorbed into the spoon, and there's heter in the spoon, you don't calculate. You don't know how much was nibla in the keli from before. You don't know if it spreads in the whole keli. Yeah. Anyway.
Can we say that?
Oh no, with a brand new spoon, it wouldn't be a problem, right? Unless you were talking. I mean,
what wouldn't be?
Blias wouldn't be a problem. You still would have a problem with the treif.
The
treif blias, but that you know how much you have. See, that's the advantage when you know with a new keli. You know how much you have. You don't have more than what you have. But when you have blias, then you have a different kind of situation, according to the ones, of course, especially we say chanan in blias. And that can only be in a ben yoima situation, only in the ben yoima, and the hefsem rule, we hold that there's no chanan in blias. Especially, even according to the Shach, who holds the riz, we hold the riznt. But even those who hold the riz, the hefsem rule, there's no chanan in blias. So this is only a concern, of course, in the last example with the dag tomeh. This is not a concern with the mechaber's example of zvuv. the plit of dvorim elu apgumim is not a problem. A tav shel muter, it's not oiseres. Right? That's all. I mean, you don't have to worry about it. You just remove the fly, remove the insect, and everything is muter. You don't have to be misharis or shishim or not. Would you want to eat it anyway? If it's a big pot and a little flea fall, I mean, it happens in the sukkah. It happens. It happens. You don't have to worry about it. It really is. But don't tell people. No, don't tell them because you're serving a bowl. Let's say it's not a pot, a bowl. It falls in. You may not want it. Depends how big it is, I guess. Depends if it's still crawling. I don't know. We are disgusted by these things. But if it's meatballs or matzo balls or all the good stuff, what are you going to throw it all out? So that's why they say, don't do it. Don't throw it out. There's nothing for you to be concerned about. It's not poison. It's
aren't there opinions that it is a problem?
Yes.
We're not choishes with it.
So even if you would be choishes, you just say, okay, there's for sure shishim keneged. Usually there is.
No, but I'm saying not everyone holds it that small.
Right.
Small.
That's the Gabi Biria. Remember the Gabi Biria, there was a chiluk of pogum asmo. But here we're talking about the issue of plita. Do these things have a plita that I have to be concerned with? And
if I can't find the fly,
then of course that's a separate problem. Yeah, but here's the plita, and even with the plita, some say no. Who says this? Who says this fly is like an achbar? Who says they're the same? Can we compare it? Maybe it's not poigim, or maybe it's not poigim me'atzmoi. Regardless, who says? We're not sure. It's not necessarily so. Either you don't hold of the chiluk, or even if you hold of the chiluk the Gabi Biria, but it does not necessarily. They won't necessarily agree that there's no plita to be worried about. If there's a plita, and it's not poigim the tafshil, who says it is, then you have to be mevatel the b'shishim. If it's poigim the tafshil, then of course it's not a problem. That's the machlokes. But the meaning is to be mekel, and we don't need to worry about it. Okay.